Are you definitely positively sure you're stuck?
I'm definitely positively sure I'm stuck.
In 1964, a simple 3-hour tour turned into one of television's strangest legends. Gilligan's Island looked like harmless comedy, but behind the coconuts and laughter were casting mistakes, real injuries, and shocking decisions that nearly destroyed the show. And the deeper you dig, the stranger the island's secrets become. Number 1. Viewers tried to get the Coast Guard to rescue the castaways. When Gilligan's Island premiered in 1964, television was still new enough that some viewers struggled to separate fiction from reality. And what happened next revealed just how powerful the medium had already become. Within weeks of the show's debut, the United States Coast Guard began receiving letters and telegrams from concerned citizens who believed the program was documenting a real maritime disaster. These messages weren't jokes. Some viewers genuinely thought 7 Americans were stranded somewhere in the Pacific Ocean and demanded to know why the government had not organized a rescue mission. One telegram even argued that the United States spent millions helping foreign nations and should therefore send a ship to rescue those poor people before they starve. For Coast Guard officials, the situation was both baffling and strangely touching. The show clearly featured exaggerated comedy, a laugh track, and impossible situations. Yet for some viewers, the images on television felt convincing enough to trigger real concern. Creator Sherwood Schwartz later recalled his astonishment when a Coast Guard officer arrived at CBS carrying a stack of these messages. The moment revealed something larger than a misunderstanding. Television had already become powerful enough to create emotional investment that felt real. Long before reality TV blurred fiction intentionally, Gilligan's Island accidentally proved that audiences could care deeply about characters they had only met through a screen. Number 2. John Williams wrote a lost calypso theme for the unaired pilot. Most viewers immediately recognize Gilligan's Island by its cheerful sea shanty opening song, but that famous melody almost never existed. The original unaired pilot actually began with a completely different musical style. Instead of the familiar folk-style narration, the opening used a calypso-inspired rhythm designed to give the show a breezy Caribbean atmosphere. Even more surprising is who composed it. The early theme was written by a young television musician named Johnny Williams. At the time, he was simply another working composer scoring small Hollywood projects. Years later, the world would know him as John Williams, the legendary composer behind Star Wars, Jaws, Indiana Jones, and dozens of other film classics. The pilot also featured an unusual vocal performance. Rather than hiring a calypso singer, creator Sherwood Schwartz recorded the song himself, attempting to imitate the Caribbean style popularized by performers like Sir Lancelot. The lyrics also described a slightly different version of the story. In that early concept, the tour lasted 6 hours instead of 3, and several characters had not yet been finalized. There was no professor, no Mary Ann, and the passenger list included 2 secretaries and a teacher. Filmed in Honolulu just days after President Kennedy's assassination, the opening harbor scene even showed an American flag flying at half-mast. When CBS rejected the pilot, Schwartz rewrote the show and replaced the theme, leaving the Calypso version as a forgotten piece of television history. Number 3. The rest of the cast fought their way into the theme song. Television theme songs may sound simple, but they can carry enormous meaning for the actors whose names appear in them. During the first season of Gilligan's Island, the lyrics introduced several characters individually: the skipper, the millionaire and his wife, and the movie star. But when it came to Russell Johnson's Professor and Dawn Wells's Mary Ann, the song grouped them together dismissively as the rest. On screen, both characters were essential members of the ensemble, yet the theme song treated them as an afterthought. Unsurprisingly, the wording irritated the actors. The issue eventually caught the attention of Bob Denver, who played Gilligan and served as the show's central figure. Denver believed the series worked best as a true ensemble where every castaway mattered equally. Using his influence as the title character, he approached the producers and asked them to change the lyrics so that Johnson and Wells would be recognized properly. Network executives initially hesitated because re-recording a theme song meant additional cost and contract adjustments. Denver then made a remarkable offer. He volunteered to move his own credit to the final position if that meant his co-stars could be included. Ultimately, the network chose a different solution and re-recorded the song. Starting in the second season, the theme ended with the line audiences still remember today, the Professor and Mary Ann. What seemed like a small change became a lasting symbol of loyalty among the cast. Number 4. Casting almost gave us Raquel Welch and Jerry Van Dyke. Hollywood history is full of famous roles that almost went to someone else, and Gilligan's Island provides 2 remarkable examples. Before Dawn Wells was cast as Mary Ann, the producers auditioned several actresses, including a young Raquel Welch. Welch certainly had the beauty and charisma needed for television, but creator Sherwood Schwartz believed she looked too glamorous to convincingly portray a simple Kansas farm girl. The character required warmth, sincerity, and small-town innocence. Dawn Wells delivered exactly that combination, and audiences quickly embraced Mary Ann as the emotional heart of the show. An even bigger casting twist involved the title character himself. The role of Gilligan was originally offered to comedian Jerry Van Dyke, younger brother of Dick Van Dyke. After reading the script, Van Dyke reportedly dismissed the concept as ridiculous and turned the role down. Instead, he chose to star in a different sitcom titled My Mother, the Car, a bizarre series about a man whose deceased mother returns as a talking automobile. The show quickly became infamous as one of television's strangest failures. Meanwhile, Bob Denver accepted the part of Gilligan and transformed the clumsy first mate into one of television's most beloved comedic characters. In Hollywood, career decisions often hinge on instinct. Sometimes that instinct leads to success, and sometimes it leads to missed opportunities that echo through entertainment history. Number 5. Tina Louise spent decades wrestling with Ginger's shadow. Among the 7 castaways, Ginger Grant represented Hollywood glamour stranded in paradise. Played by Tina Louise, the character was elegant, confident, and clearly inspired by the classic movie star image. Yet behind the scenes, Louise experienced a far more complicated relationship with the role that made her famous. Trained as a serious dramatic actress, she initially believed the show would revolve around Ginger as its central figure. Instead, the series evolved into an ensemble comedy where Ginger was often written as a stereotypical, dumb movie star. As the show gained popularity, Louise began worrying that the role might permanently define her career. Typecasting was a serious concern for actors in the 1960s, especially for actresses whose beauty sometimes overshadowed their acting ability in the eyes of producers. When reunion movies were produced years later, Louise declined to return, forcing producers to recast Ginger with another actress. Financial frustration also played a role in her feelings. Like many television performers of that era, the cast earned modest salaries and received no residual payments from the endless reruns that later made the show a syndication phenomenon. Over time, Louise softened her public criticism and acknowledged that she appreciated the opportunity the series had given her. Still, her story reflects a deeper truth about Hollywood fame. Sometimes the characters audiences love most become the roles actors struggle hardest to escape. Number 6. Alan Hale Jr. worked weeks with a broken wrist. Behind the skipper's booming voice and constant frustration with Gilligan was a level of dedication few viewers ever realized. Alan Hale Jr. built much of his performance around energetic physical comedy. The character was frequently climbing palm trees, hauling ropes, dragging Gilligan away from trouble, or collapsing dramatically in exhaustion. During the first season, one of those stunts went wrong. Hale was filming a fall from a palm tree when he missed the landing pad and fractured his wrist. In modern productions, an injury like that would likely pause filming while the actor recovered. But television schedules in the 1960s were demanding and inflexible. Episodes had to be delivered on time each week, and rewriting scenes could disrupt the entire production. Instead of stopping work, Hale quietly continued filming. For weeks, he performed scenes while hiding the injury from the cast and crew. He carried props, lifted Bob Denver during comedic moments, and continued performing the energetic physical routines that defined the skipper's character. Only at the season wrap party did producer Sherwood Schwartz notice Hale's swollen wrist and ask what had happened. Hale casually admitted it had been broken for weeks. When Schwartz asked how he managed to keep performing, Hale simply replied, "It wasn't easy." The moment revealed the professionalism behind the show's comedy. Audiences saw effortless slapstick, but the actor behind it endured real pain to keep the laughter going. Number 7. The lagoon was freezing, polluted, and very much in Los Angeles. The island lagoon looked like a tropical paradise on television. Palm trees leaned over calm water while the castaways built bamboo huts and strange coconut inventions along the shore. But the truth behind that famous lagoon was far less glamorous. The set was built on the CBS Studio Center lot in Studio City, California, and the sparkling lagoon seen on screen was actually a shallow artificial pool only a few feet deep. Because filming often stretched into cooler months, the water could become extremely cold. Actors had to wade into it repeatedly while cameras reset for different angles, sometimes spending hours standing in the chilly water. Bob Denver reportedly wore a hidden wetsuit beneath Gilligan's costume just to tolerate the cold. Cleanliness was another problem. Without proper circulation, algae and debris frequently collected in the water, leaving it murky between shoots. At one point, Denver and Alan Hale Jr. reportedly dropped a fish into the lagoon to see if it could survive. The fish died almost immediately, confirming the water conditions were far from healthy. Meanwhile, the illusion of a remote island was constantly interrupted by reality. The studio was located near busy Los Angeles streets, and traffic noise often forced directors to stop filming and start scenes again. For audiences, it looked like paradise. For the actors, it was a cold studio pool surrounded by cameras and city noise. Number 8. The island's coordinates changed whenever the writers needed them to. One of the most puzzling mysteries in Gilligan's Island was the island's location. Throughout the series, radio broadcasts and bits of dialogue occasionally revealed coordinates supposedly identifying where the castaways were stranded in the Pacific Ocean. But attentive fans later discovered something strange when they tried to map those numbers. The island appeared to move. In one episode, the coordinates placed it relatively close to Hawaii. In another, it seemed thousands of miles away near the coast of Mexico. Some locations didn't correspond to any real place on Earth at all. Viewers searching for a logical explanation eventually realized the truth was much simpler. The writers never treated the island as a fixed location. It was merely a storytelling tool. If a plot required a nearby shipping lane, the island conveniently appeared along one. If the script called for a storm, another island civilization, or a passing airplane, the location shifted again. Even the visual shots used to establish the island came from different places. Some scenes used Caribbean islands, while others relied on footage filmed in Hawaii. Combined with the backlot set in California, the result created a fictional geography that changed whenever the story required it. The professor might have been able to build radios from coconuts, but even he probably couldn't explain how the island itself seemed to drift across the Pacific from week to week. Number 9. The castaways became Saturday morning cartoons with a blonde ginger and a moralizing monkey. By the early 1970s, Gilligan's Island had already begun a surprising second life. Syndication reruns airing in the afternoons introduced the show to an entirely new generation of viewers, many of them children who had been too young to see the original broadcast. Television executives quickly realized something remarkable. The castaways still had enormous entertainment value. That discovery led to one of the strangest reinventions in the show's history. In 1974, the animation studio Filmation created a Saturday morning cartoon titled The New Adventures of Gilligan. Much of the original cast returned to voice their characters, including Bob Denver, Alan Hale Jr., Russell Johnson, Jim Backus, and Natalie Schaefer. Their voices helped make the animated version feel like a continuation of the original series. But two important absences forced the producers to improvise. Tina Louise declined to participate because she still wanted distance from the Ginger role. To avoid legal complications, the animators redesigned Ginger with blonde hair rather than her famous red hairstyle. Dawn Wells was unavailable due to stage commitments, so voice actress Jane Webb performed both Mary Ann and Ginger, credited under two different names. The cartoon also introduced a mischievous monkey named Snubby, who often helped solve problems and deliver simple moral lessons. Despite its modest animation, the series became popular enough to inspire another spin-off in 1982 called Gilligan's Planet, which hilariously sent the castaways into outer space. Number 10. Natalie Schaefer hid her age and quietly built a fortune. On television, Lovey Howell appeared to be the ultimate pampered aristocrat. Draped in pearls and elegant outfits, she behaved as though a life of luxury had left her completely unprepared for survival on a deserted island. Off-screen, however, actress Natalie Schaefer was far more independent and strategic than the character she portrayed. Schaefer was actually 13 years older than Jim Backus, who played her husband Thurston Howell III. In an industry where aging actresses often struggled to find roles, Schaefer guarded her real birth year carefully. Hollywood rumors circulated for years suggesting that very few people knew her exact age. Some stories even claimed her own husband might not have known the number. Unlike many performers who relied entirely on acting income, Schaefer had already secured financial stability through smart real estate investments in Beverly Hills, long before Gilligan's Island began filming. Those investments quietly made her wealthy. In fact, she reportedly accepted the role partly because the pilot episode was filmed in Hawaii, giving her an opportunity for an all-expenses-paid vacation. On set, she negotiated certain conditions, limiting physically demanding scenes and avoiding excessive close-ups that might reveal her age on camera. Even with those restrictions, Schaefer delivered one of the show's most memorable comedic performances. When she died in 1991, she donated millions of dollars to charities supporting retired actors, revealing a generosity few viewers ever knew about. Number 11. Gilligan's Island was canceled to save Gunsmoke. By the end of its third season in 1967, Gilligan's Island was not a failing show. In fact, it held a respectable position in the television ratings, landing roughly in the middle of the network rankings. The cast and crew believed they were entering another stable season, and several actors even began making long-term plans in Los Angeles, assuming production would continue. But television history sometimes changes for reasons that have nothing to do with ratings. At the same time Gilligan's Island was holding steady, the long-running Western Gunsmoke was struggling. CBS executives had already prepared to cancel the aging series when an unexpected voice intervened. According to widely repeated industry stories, William Paley's wife, an avid fan of Gunsmoke, urged the powerful network president not to end the show. Saving it required moving Gunsmoke into a better time slot. Unfortunately for the castaways, that time slot belonged to Gilligan's Island. The network chose to remove the comedy from the schedule to make room. The decision shocked the cast and crew, who had no opportunity to film a final episode or bring the character's story to a proper conclusion. Production simply ended, leaving the fate of the stranded passengers unresolved. Ironically, the cancellation helped create the show's lasting legacy. Once it entered syndication, Gilligan's Island became one of the most frequently rerun programs in television history, introducing the castaways to generations who had never seen the original broadcast. Number 12. The SS Minnow took a quiet shot at the FCC. The small charter boat responsible for the entire adventure had a name that sounded harmless, the SS Minnow. Most viewers assumed the name simply referred to a tiny fish fitting for a modest tourist vessel. But the truth behind the name carried a subtle message directed at one of television's most influential critics. In 1961, Federal Communications Commission Chairman Newton Minnow delivered a famous speech describing American television as a vast wasteland. His criticism angered many producers who felt their work was being unfairly dismissed by government regulators. Sherwood Schwartz, the creator of Gilligan's Island, responded with humor rather than argument. When it came time to name the ill-fated tour boat, he chose Minnow, a playful reference to Newton Minnow's surname. Each week, viewers watched the SS Minnow sail confidently away from the harbor before running into the storm that stranded its passengers. To Schwartz, it was a lighthearted inside joke aimed at the man who had publicly criticized television. Some fans later speculated that the initials SS might also have represented Schwartz's own name, adding another layer of meaning. Whether intentional or not, the result was a clever piece of industry satire hiding in plain sight. Ironically, Newton Minnow reportedly appreciated the joke and maintained friendly relations with Schwartz in later years. The tiny boat that wrecked in the opening credits every week became a humorous reminder that television creators often answer criticism with creativity rather than confrontation. Number 13. Jim Backus turned forgetting his wallet into a running gag. Jim Backus was already a well-established performer long before he stepped onto the island as Thurston Howell III, known widely as the voice of the animated character Mr. Magoo. Backus brought decades of experience and a mischievous sense of humor to the set of Gilligan's Island. That playful personality often extended beyond the cameras. During breaks in filming, Backus frequently invited fellow cast members out for lunch, particularly Dawn Wells and Natalie Schaefer. The outings became a regular part of the production routine, but over time, a curious pattern began to emerge. When the bill arrived at the end of the meal, Backus would suddenly discover that he had forgotten his wallet. At first, the cast assumed it was an honest mistake. But when the situation repeated itself again and again, it became clear that Backus might be enjoying the joke a little too much. The irony, of course, was impossible to ignore. The actor portraying television's wealthiest millionaire somehow never had money when it came time to pay for lunch. Eventually, Natalie Schaefer decided to settle the score in her own elegant way. At the season wrap party, she presented Backus with an itemized list of every meal the cast had covered for him. The total came to roughly $300, a significant amount in the mid-1960s. According to cast stories, Backus burst into laughter when he saw the bill and happily paid the entire amount. The incident became part of the show's behind-the-scenes folklore, perfectly reflecting the playful spirit that defined the series. Number 14. Fans began interpreting the castaways as the 7 deadly sins. As Gilligan's Island continued to thrive in syndication over the years, audiences began looking at the show in ways its creators had never anticipated. What started as lighthearted escapist comedy gradually inspired deeper interpretations from fans and television critics. One of the most widely discussed theories suggested that each of the 7 castaways symbolized one of the traditional 7 deadly sins. In this reading, Ginger represented lust with her glamorous movie star persona, while wealthy Thurston Howell embodied greed. The skipper's explosive temper fit the idea of wrath. Gilligan's constant clumsiness and lack of urgency reflected sloth, and the professor's intellectual confidence hinted at pride. Marianne's sweetness sometimes masked moments of envy, while Lovey Howell's indulgent lifestyle was linked to gluttony. Together, the characters appeared to represent exaggerated human flaws trapped together on a paradise they could never fully escape. At first, creator Sherwood Schwartz dismissed the theory, explaining that the characters were simply designed with clear, recognizable personalities that helped audiences follow the ensemble comedy. Yet over time, even Schwartz admitted the interpretation was fascinating. Scholars later connected the castaways to older storytelling traditions, comparing them to the stock characters of Italian commedia dell'arte and to symbolic figures representing different social classes in American culture. Whether intentional or accidental, the theory demonstrated something remarkable. A sitcom once dismissed as simple entertainment had become rich enough to invite deeper cultural analysis. Number 15. The castaways returned in increasingly bizarre reunion adventures. The story of the stranded castaways did not end when the original series was canceled. In fact, the characters continued appearing in new projects for more than a decade afterward. In 1978, a television movie titled Rescue from Gilligan's Island finally answered the question fans had been asking for years. What would happen if the castaways were rescued? Most of the original actors returned to their roles, and the story followed the characters as they attempted to adjust to life back in civilization. Yet the ending delivered a familiar twist when they eventually returned to the island once again. The following year brought the castaways on Gilligan's Island, which imagined the wealthy Howells turning the island into a luxury resort. Predictably, the plan created new complications that left the group stranded yet again. The strangest installment arrived in 1981 with the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. In that unusual crossover, the famous basketball team crash-landed on the island and eventually played a game against robotic opponents. The film blended sports, science fiction, and sitcom nostalgia in a way that felt almost surreal. Some roles had to be recast due to scheduling conflicts and pay disputes, but audiences were still eager to revisit the characters. These increasingly unusual stories demonstrated just how deeply the castaways had embedded themselves in American pop culture. Even years after the show ended, their adventures continued in places no one originally imagined. More than half a century later, Gilligan's Island remains a reminder that even the simplest stories can leave lasting cultural footprints. Behind the laughter were lessons about teamwork, resilience, and human nature. If you enjoyed this journey into classic TV history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives.